Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Heart Centered Conversations with me, Jane McDowell from Rewilding Women's Voices. And today it is my great pleasure to introduce Grace. Grace, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi everyone. Jane, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Grace Mosuro. I'm an inclusion strategist and coach. I run a company called Acquaintance Consulting, and we are essentially here to support organizations to create more inclusive spaces. I'm also a podcast host, so I've got a podcast called The Organizational Inclusionist, which is about everything diversity and inclusion. I'm a mom to an almost 13-year-old daughter. Um, and yeah, that's me.
Fabulous. And Grace, congratulations on the work you're doing. Really important. And hope that you get into more organizations and that they take up the mantle of that true
Mm,
inclusion and diversity, because I think that for a lot of people it's a bit of a tick box and
mm,
it shouldn't be. Anyway,
thank you.
tell me, what's the book that you brought to this conversation today?
So my book is Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh,
And it is, get
yeah,
out of blur. There we
yeah,
go.
got it.
Women Who Run with the Wolves. And it is an absolutely amazing book. It is as thick as the Bible,
Yeah,
but it's definitely well worth the read. Um, I discovered the book right after my divorce, actually, and it was around the time when Red Table Talks was popular with Jada Pinkett Smith, and
mm-hmm.
she actually talked about the book on there and how it really helped her during a significant period of transition in her life and kind of discovering, what she wanted out of life, etc. So I was like, let me check this book out, and
Ah,
it is absolutely amazing, absolutely transformational. Um, and it's one of those. So I've grown up in quite a strict culture. So I'm Nigerian, and
yeah,
it's very prescriptive in terms of kind of the role of a woman in a Nigerian family. And I very much felt like I'd been caged in for a long time, kind of,
yeah,
submitting to the requirements of that role. I'm really unsure of actually, is this me or is this just what's been created of me based on the expectations of the position that I played in my family?
uh,
Always kind of battled with that. And then reading the book really helped me to identify with the fact that actually, no, I'm a wild woman. I
good.
need to
Love
be,
wild women.
yeah, I need to be kind of free. And that's really important for me, like freedom and being able to just be my authentic self and do the things that make me happy, things that make my heart sing. And the book really speaks to that and just helps you to reclaim your power, I feel. So amazing book.
Yeah, that sounds so powerful because that is something that comes up a lot with the clients that I work with and generally women I talk to. And this whole thing about whether we live into the expectations of other people or we follow our own path
Mm,
is a really big question, because I was having this conversation yesterday with a group of women, and the pressure is always on to conform, to be part of the pack, to I heard it explained in a book recently. It's good girl conditioning,
mm,
and that really keeps us stuck because it keeps us suppressed. And although that we get those sort of dopamine hits when we're congratulated for, oh, that's really great what you did, but it's all small. It's
mm,
none of it's about you just being you and shining and really delving into all the possibilities available to you. And I think that's really exciting. And so
mm,
I think it's great to hear that you've come from a background where you felt like, a bit closed in, and that you found a way to be yourself. And,
mm.
you know, and tell me what came up for you when you realized, actually, I don't have to play the game the way that I've been told all my life, and that
Mm.
I can do what I want to do and follow my path.
Yeah, I think there are two things that happened. So one of them was I was frightened, like really scared. Like if I'm not who I have been all of this time, then who am I? And there's that element of actually I now need to spend time discovering what makes me happy, the things that drive me, the things that I no longer want to do. So that was scary, is just that, having to reassess your entire life and who you are and who you want to be going forward. And then the other side of it was I felt free. And like anyone that knows me knows that, if there's a song that refers to freedom, I get really excited and I'm screaming it. But also I did a disc assessment recently,
Yeah.
and the disc assessment said exactly the same thing. It talked about kind of my need for just free agency to just be myself, and not wanting to ever be restricted or closed in, um and just, yeah, valuing freedom. For me, it's just life is way too short for us to be confined and caged in and unable to just be our full and authentic and amazing selves.
Okay.
So that is the good thing that came out of just that awareness for me.
Yeah. And so tell me, Grace, because often the people around us, the people who are closest to us, are those that want to keep us safe, which means keeping us as we are, because that's what we know, and you're still alive. And so, how did they react when you started doing things differently?
It's a really tricky one, I think, because one of the things that I always say to my friends when they're, having issues with people is that as human beings, we're natural born takers, right? And so if someone, in my role in my family, I was the eldest, so a lot of responsibility was placed on me, and my family were used to me doing everything and paying for a lot of stuff and things like that. And only after my dad died in 2018, and I really struggled with it. And only after his passing and me getting some counseling did I realize actually just the fact that, so I was in a lot of physical pain after my dad died. I had this really like heavy pain, physical pain in my chest.
Yeah.
I'm really big into crystals then. So I went to a crystal shop, and I was like, my dad's just passed. My family's really struggling. I want to get them some crystals to help us through the process. And so I described everyone in my family and kind of what they were going through and got some crystals for them. And then the lady that was helping me said, "Okay, now what about you?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, me." And
Mm,
she was like, "The fact that I had to remind you about yourself says a lot about where you are." So talk me
yeah.
through where you are. And I said, "I've got this really bad physical pain in my chest that literally came the day my dad died, and I haven't been able to get rid of it." And she explained to me that that pain was a result of me not expressing myself and not expressing what I needed and being so focused on everybody else. And it was almost my body's way of crying out to me to speak. And that moment was really powerful. But then also through counseling, it really came out that I hadn't ever really shared how I felt or put myself first.
Why do
Um,
you think that was, Grace?
because there wasn't space for it. My role as the firstborn was very maternal. So I was essentially like the second mum to my younger brother. I was if mum wasn't around, everything fell on me. Um, and my mum and dad, the messaging had very much been throughout my life, set the example, you look after your little brother and sister and things like that. So there wasn't ever a space for, how are you doing? Are you okay? What do you need? So I just grew up conditioned never to express what I needed because it was never asked of me. Um, and I think that what that meant is that my family got really used to me being that person. And when I got to the point where actually to heal myself, I now needed to put myself first. My family and some of my friends really struggled with that because I was the one that people would go to when they needed help, when they needed advice and things like that. And when I decided that actually I'm going to take a step back and not, immediately offer to do stuff or put myself out, sometimes doing things that weren't even asked. I decided actually I'm just going to stay here. um, yeah, some people really struggled. I remember my brother and my sister one day calling me tight because I wasn't going to pay for the takeaway. And I was like, I've been paying for this for years, but it just goes to show that people are so, when they get used to something, they see that as just the norm. And when
Mm,
you decide to do something differently, it can sometimes be a challenge for people. But I think the right people have adjusted, and those that couldn't adjust just aren't in my life anymore.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think you need to, I'm really big on some of the people that we have in our lives are here for a season or they're here for a lifetime. And I think it's really important for us to be comfortable with differentiating the two. I think we sometimes try and keep people that should be here for a season in here for a lifetime. And that in itself can become just unhealthy. So yeah, really comfortable with where I am, but it was a transition without a doubt.
yeah, definitely. So when you first read the book, Grace, what was it that struck you most when you read it? What was it that like went straight to your heart and you thought,
I think it was just I could feel myself in the book, almost like, I was a character in the story. And there aren't many books that do that for me. I think it was also just where I was in my life. But it's interesting as well because the story is it's a fiction book, but it's a bit like for me, it's a bit like The Alchemist for anyone that's ever read The Alchemist, which is also a fiction book, but there are so many messages that just jump out at you. And I think just the biggest one was just that freedom. I felt like freedom just ran throughout the entirety of that book, and it just kept crying out to me like, yeah, I want to be free. I want to be free.
hmm,
Um, which
yeah,
is such a contrast because I'm always like when I'm with friends and stuff, I'm like, if you know of a good potential candidate to be my husband, please do let me know. But then they also hear me talk about, I want to be free, I want to be free. But I do think it's possible to be free and still be surrounded by people.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that
Yeah.
that is the greatest gift we can give our
Mm.
partners, isn't it? To let them be themselves. It's that whole, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, this feeling that we have to attach, but actually the detachment is far healthier to allow people to be, you know,
Yeah.
I think we've all experienced a friend at some point in our life who gets jealous of all our other friends. Like,
Mhm.
hang on a minute, you don't own me. Like,
Yeah,
you're just as much a friend to me as someone else. There's no danger because I have another friend. And
exactly.
it's that letting go and letting people be who they are. I think
Mhm.
that's the greatest gift we can give people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's what really, really stood out for me. Yeah, it's just amazing. Even at the bottom of the cover, it says everyone who can read should read this book. And
Mm.
and Maya Angelou said that about this book. So for anyone listening, if Maya's telling you to read this book, read this
Read the
book.
book. Awesome. And did it make you cry, the book?
Um, no, it didn't make me cry. It did make me very emotional and present. But it was just such an empowering story. Um, but yeah, there's definitely elements in there, I think, that can make you really emotional, especially when um, just things start falling into place for you when you kind of look at what the book is saying and then think about your life. And some of that can be quite emotional. So I definitely recommend people have tissues ready. But for me, it was just such a freeing book that there was, even though there was some elements of sadness, most of it was joy at the realization of actually, it's okay for me to be different and for me to be who I want to be. And that, yeah, that doesn't make me a bad person. So, yeah, it was just liberating for me.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm also curious, Grace, just going back to what you were saying about after your father passed and you had this pain in your chest and you went to seek help. How did that go? And did that clear soon? What
Yeah,
sort of
so
journey did you
it
take?
went well. It did clear, but it was actually it's also interesting because then back in the day as well, I also used to I spoke to I can't remember what she's called specifically, but she basically read my horoscope to me as well. And at the time she said if I hadn't told her about the chest pain, and she said, I see something in this around a pain in your chest or like something in your chest. And I was like, that's really interesting because blah, blah, blah. And I told her. And she said there is something in that area that you are going to need to get resolved. And then fast forward a year or two, the pain had subsided. But then a year or two later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So it was a really, really just all of that coming together for me, which is why I'm the woman that I am today, because I definitely think that kind of holding or withholding my needs from myself, and not taking the freedom that I needed, I definitely think contributed to the illness that I then developed. Um, so for me, it was just a really powerfully transformative time. And I do wish, obviously, with everything in me, that my dad was still here. But I also think that if my dad was still here, I'd probably still be living the same life that I was before because there wouldn't have been anything to shake me awake. Um, and his passing was a time that was necessary for me in my kind of transition into who I am today. I miss him with everything in me, but yeah, I wouldn't have sought any help if he was still here because I would have just carried on as normal.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful thing to hear that out of so much pain you recognize that
Mm.
there was a gift.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that that's true for all of us. Whatever pain or challenges we come across, they are mostly a gift wrapped up in a painful wrapping that once we get through the pain, we can see the gift. So yeah. And are you well again now, Grace?
Yes, I am completely cancer free. I am 4 years cancer free, which is amazing.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so really, really grateful.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and it's strange, isn't it, how grief brings things up for us. I remember when my dad died, I just felt like all around my solar plexus, I just felt like I had a huge hole right through my body, and the wind just howled through it like storm.
Mm.
I just felt so bereft. And yeah, we all go through our own journey with grief, don't we? And it's so
Yeah.
perfect.
It's so interesting to help you describe it like that as well, because I remember the day that he died, I was in the room. We were all in the room when he passed, and when he took his last breath, I felt like people were on both sides of me and had ripped my clothes off. I was completely naked. I had this like really deep hole in my stomach that was just a depth of grief that I'd never felt in my life. Like I felt hungry, but it wasn't like it. That's the only thing I can compare it to is like that pain when you're just really, really hungry. But it was just, yeah, it was just a pit of grief that I don't think I will ever feel again. Even when my mum passes, I don't feel like it's possible to feel greater grief than that. I feel like my body's almost primed for it now, so it's ready. But I get what you mean about feeling like there's something missing, like
Mm.
there's a gap. I 100% resonate with that. It's so crazy. And the crazy thing as well is we weren't even like me and my dad we weren't besties. We definitely had our issues. But I didn't realize how much I loved him until he was gone. And the fact that there were so many things that we needed to talk about that we never got the chance to. I think for me, that's why freedom and authenticity is so important to me now, is because I know my dad lived most of his life not doing what he genuinely wanted to do in his life. And I'm so sad that he never got to just be free because that's really all he wanted. So I almost feel like it's a call to action for me to like do what my dad didn't get to do, and that he'd be really happy to see me just being free.
Yeah. So when
Mhm.
you reflect on that, Grace, has it changed the way that you are with your own child?
Um, I so my daughter. It's interesting because when I was raised in a really strict household, so I always said that I was going to do things differently with my daughter. I wanted her to have a voice. I wanted her to feel like she was heard. I wanted her to feel free to do and be anything that she wants to be, which is a big part of why I do the work that I do as well. Um, so yeah, I definitely see that. I also encourage her to share how she feels. And that wasn't ever something that was done when I was growing up. I never knew how anyone felt in my family. We never discussed feelings. And I grew up believing that vulnerability was a weakness and that you had to be strong all the time. And I, without a doubt, encourage and sometimes force it on her, like, just tell me how you feel. It's okay to cry. And she's like, I'm all right, thanks. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? So I think I've probably gone like the full other way with her, and I'm like way too soppy and like affectionate. She's turning 13 tomorrow and she's sick of me. She's like,
Um, well, when they get, I don't have kids, but I've got nieces and nephews, and I know that when they get to their teens, they just like kind of like, yeah, whatever. They just seem to lose all their vocabulary and their spark and everything, and they just turn
100%.
into this grunting little creature. And then
Yeah,
and then they appear again a few years later, and it's lovely.
exactly. And that's what I'm really looking forward to is that I feel like she's got the foundation so that when she's emotionally mature enough, she will just land beautifully and feel really comfortable with expressing herself and her needs and wants. And just hopefully feeling like she can be free.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. What a beautiful way to parent your child.
Thank you. I'm not sure
Well,
she.
Grace, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I've loved our conversation.
Oh,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
being so open and honest about how you felt in the past and what's gone on for you. And so delighted to hear that you're fully recovered from your cancer. And yeah, and keep up the great work that you're doing.
Thank
So
you so much. My absolute pleasure joining you today. I've had a really good time.
brilliant. So, anyone who's listening, if you want to know more about Grace's work and how to contact her, I will put her contact details in the description of the show. And I will see you all in the next episode. Take care. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.